Welcome everyone to DialMForFilms. Writer, director, producer Vikramaditya Motwane's work is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. He started working at the age of 17 with his mother Deepa Motwane on a television show called Teen Talk. 2 years on the show and a 9-month course at XIC later, Vikram got his first job as an assistant director with Sanjay Leela Bhansali. He worked on Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam and Devdas. Incidentally, Devdas completes 18 years today. After Sanjay Leela Bhansali, he assisted Deepa Mehta on Water. Vikram started working in 1994. He wrote his first film Udaan in 2003. Udaan world premiered at Cannes Film Festival in 2010. It took Vikram 16 years to make his first film as director. Those 16 years were Vikram's college, his learning ground, his journey to his first milestone as director, to even figuring out if he wanted to be a director. He met some of his key collaborators, starting with his wife, an exceptional photographer and now actor Ishika Mohan Motwane, director Anurag Kashyap, sound designer Kunal Sharma, cinematographer Mahendra Shetty, and a host of others, his tribe, as he fondly refers to them as, during this time. His roster as both director and producer is impressive and distinct. In his 26 years in the industry, Vikram has seen dizzying highs, numbing plateaus, and crushing lows. Somehow, Vikram's successes and failures all seem very personal because he feels like one of us made it. Vikram has a new production company, Andolan. He's working on multiple projects. He's always plotting a revolution. So let's pull him in. Thank you, Vikram, for making the time.
Where's my lifetime achievement award? You made it.
Listen, you need to give me one for reading of this. The longest introduction. No, but Vikram, I was really pleasantly surprised when you chose to speak about keeping a creator's mind and spirit strong. You could have picked any number of topics to speak about: show running, editing, producing, directing, writing, but you picked this one. Why?
I think two things. One is just because I'm just generally thankful, for just a lot of the people who have been sort of like, by my side now. And then you realize that, and especially this pandemic, I think it was just when this thing started off and, so much of us are spending our time at home. And I realized that everybody we're talking to is like, and it's a joke, there's a meme right now, we're going through these like amazing highs and these crushing lows. And as a filmmaker, it's almost like, what do you do? How do you? And this was exactly the time I was like, okay, how do I? What do I do with my time? How do I spend my time? How do I be productive? And I think that when we were chatting, I just figured that it just took me back to the time one is spent trying to make it. The time one is, and I figured that this was actually the perfect thing that we should be talking about.
Vikram, so let's start from the beginning. You started working with Sanjay Leela Bhansali as an assistant director. What were the first 6 months like?
It was actually pretty crazy. So just before I started working with Sanjay Bhansali, I was working, as you mentioned, on Teen Talk, and I jumped into this. Mom was, so a little bit of history. Mom, my parents got divorced in the late 80s. Mom's first job was as a production manager. She had to learn on the job. He worked with this filmmaker called Shukla Das, who used to make corporate films and documentaries. And Shukla Das had an assistant called Sanjay Leela Bhansali. My mom and Bhansali became friends. They opened their own company together, which was a disaster because these two artist-type characters were getting budgets for shooting on Beta and Umatic and were trying to go out and shoot on 35mm stuff. And so all the money was getting wasted. She then had this thing of like wanted to make this television talk show for teenagers. And I think it's maybe because me and my sister were at the age where it was the time for those kind of conversations, but also just felt that maybe there's a larger, voice that, or larger things that need to be said. And she started this talk show, and I started working on that as an assistant. And the director there was this gentleman called Manu Gargi, who today was one of the co-producers on Martin Scorsese's Silence, and he had actually got launched as a Devanand hero when he first came to the industry. Even though he's from Vassar College and all that, I don't know why that happened, but anyway, so he was one of my first sort of mentors, someone I learned a lot from. So started in television, did work on Teen Talk, and there was 2 seasons of it. There was one English one, which was with Mom and Jalal Aga as the host, and then afterwards we had Sagar Arya come on board and do the Hindi version. I started also work on the show called Disney Club, which was, this thing where you go out and shoot. So from that world, I was jumping into the Sanjay Bhansali world. And in that world, before that, in TV, I was getting paid, this is what, 95, 96, I was getting paid 8,000 rupees a month, which was a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Someone who's less than 20 years old at that point in time. And now I'm working with Sanjay Bhansali on Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam. Of course, we don't know what the film is yet, because I've kind of come in. And my salary is now 2,500 rupees a month, for which I have to work 30 plus days of the month. 6 months, honestly, were really, they were pretty, it was like you're hit by this barrage of information that you didn't know existed out there. So not only is it about, you're now learning about the history of films, you're learning about processes that you've never been a part of before. You're learning about how to write. You're learning about how to listen to music with a different ear. You're learning about how to look at art direction with a different ear. You're learning about costume design. You're learning about all those things. And it's also at this rapid pace, because not only are you learning about it, you're also told, okay, go out and do this and go out and do that. And you're just, running here, running there. Doing pretty much, everything. And Sanjay works with a system where it's not, I think, later on, I think, and Excel being, I think, one of the first companies that got in, the first 80, second 80 system that came in with Excel and with Lagan. Before that, it was like you, assistant director, meant you were everything. You were the DA, and you were the first AD, and you were the second AD, and you were pretty much everything. You were doing that kind of stuff. So, perfect for learning, actually. It was the best thing to learn, because you're not a producer's person. You're a true director's person, but you've also got responsibility on the job. It's real. It's like it's not school. It's like the mistakes you make have real world repercussions. And mistakes I have made, tons of them. Where you're on the job and you've gone and got the wrong kind of kurtas for a song, and the next thing you know, your director's blowing a stop, and lots of these kind of situations. You missed a train to go to the FTI, to go and look at a film. So all these mistakes have been made. But you quickly realize that there are repercussions to that, and you also then quickly learn like how to listen, how to pay attention, how to all those kind of things. The things that you should have been doing in the first place, but now because.
But Vikram, when you worked on 2 films with Sanjay, what was the trajectory like? Like once you came on set and you started to do this, how did you find your feet? How did you start getting, how did you start getting to know what are the things you like? What are the things that you want to focus on? What are the things that you're naturally attracted to? You
just kind of flow with it, right? When you come in, your main thing is your duty. Your first thing is like, my job here is, I'm not the director, I'm an assistant director, and my job is to do whatever the director wants me to do, right? So most of the time, you're not really thinking about, at that point in time, what I like, what I don't like, what am I learning, what am I not learning. You don't think you're learning anything at that point. All you're doing is you're doing the work. You're getting there, getting off. What's my job list for the day? It's this. Let's go finish all these things for the entire day. Let's go finish that for the day. And there's so much work, and it's such a high level of intensity of work, that at that point in time, you're not thinking about, am I learning this, am I learning that? You next thing, it's 6 months later, 8 months later, you're like, okay, now I know how to write a screenplay. Or I know what that format is. Or I know how to be able to sit through music sittings and what I actually sort of like need for that. Or when you're at the shoot. And so Hamdil was like, classic 2.5. I mean, it was like 2.5 years from, so I started in Jan 97 and June 99 or July 99 was, the release of the film. So in that process, we didn't start shooting until December. So we had 11 months of prep on that film. So we went all the way from choosing, okay, what script are we actually sort of like working on? Sanjay had 3 stories in his mind. So it's like, okay, there's this and there's that and there's that, right? So there's a lot of back and forth that sort of like goes on that. Then you start the entire process of writing. While you're writing is also research. I had to go and spend a lot of time in this place called the Indian National Theatre, which used to be in Fort, in a gully behind. And you know it existed. But the INT is a place which actually had a lot of these recordings of grassroots theatre, of Indian theatre at village level and at town level and all that stuff. So, yeah, I mean, you're going there for a job to basically take a bunch of this stuff and sit with all these really interesting people and talk to them about that. And so it feels like a job. Of course, 1 year later, you're like, wow, I learned so much. So, but at that moment, you're absolutely not thinking about what you're learning. You're just doing the job. And then shooting started. Then shooting starts in December of that year. Now you're you've been shooting with these, video cameras all your life, and suddenly it's like 35mm film camera and big lights and cranes and floors and Anil Mehta, oh my God, cinematographer, and all these suddenly these huge. They seem like Goliaths at that point in time, right? You seem like this tiny little guy, and everybody else is this giant who's done. And Anil Mehta has been the associate director on Mirch Masala and Bhavani Bhavai, and he's also shot Khamoshi. So you're like, oh my God, it's Mehta. All these things, and also then you're coming from a time where it doesn't exist, and I'm not sure it's a good thing, but there is a protocol of how you deal with a certain kind of thing. There's a protocol of how an assistant director is supposed to talk to the cinematographer, how that sort of stuff is. So you start to learn those things. A lot of that's not there right now. I'm not sure it's a good thing or a bad thing, but so anyway, as I was saying, it's like you basically do all this kind of stuff. You do your job, and you don't know if you're learning or not. But eventually, a year and a half later, 2.5 years later, you figured you have learned it. But I think the biggest learning through all that, before I went inside, and I think we've spoken about, was the fact that I didn't know if I wanted to be a director at that point. I had no idea. It was an opportunity. I had been an assistant director. I realized I had an affinity for the editing room. That's something I really liked. I enjoyed the challenge of the edit room, where it's just like, okay, now you have this footage, and now let's try and put it together. And I think I took that challenge a little further with Sanjay, and was like, okay, I'll do this film, but I still didn't know. I mean, I had this big desire to be like a sports cinematographer. There's a lot more things that I wanted, and I wasn't quite sure I wanted to be a director. And I think a lot of it came from, did I really have anything to say? Which is one of the things that we will talk about, today, which is about.
Vikram, this time when you're kind of doing relentless work, like you said that, being an assistant director is just like, initially you're just following instructions. You're just trying to grapple with all the deadlines, all the things you have to do. And it's only later that you begin to realize that, okay, I'm learning something, right? But that time is brutal because the stress is really high. You have to perform. There's so much at stake that even the director, like a little mistake would mean a blow up, right? How does a young person handle that? Like, how do you keep yourself motivated? How do you keep yourself centered, and keep working at it? Because that is your daily grind.
You have to, and I've seen a lot of assistant directors, especially with Sanjay, where they've come in because they feel, I want to be an assistant director, I want to go out there and make films, and they realize in a month and a half that I'm just not cut out for it, right? Because it's really hard work. It can be soul crushing in a sense, because you're kind of like, you're going in there and you think you're working really hard. Of course, your experience is nowhere near the level of your seniors, right? So obviously you're going to be at a disadvantage already. On top of which, there is the work pressure. There's always deadlines. There's always something sort of like me. On top of which, you've got a fairly volatile boss who demands a hell of a lot out of you. And because like at that point in time, I'm like, yaar, chal na yaar, why you chill out, right? It's only when you become a director that you realize what really drives directors, to be the way they are, and to demand what they do demand from their assistants. But at that point in time, you are sort of like, so yes, there are days when you come back home and you are in tears and you're like, why am I doing this? Why am I sort of like going through this entire grind? But I think for me, it's like I had made up my mind before that whatever happens, I'm going to finish this film. It's like you have to sort of like jump in. I'm going to have good days and I'm going to have bad days, and the days where it's just going to be that you just want to wake up one day and just quit your job and not do it, because why am I going through this for this little money and so much work, and you smoke my cigarettes also and all those kind of things. But I think I had made up my mind before I started that I'm going to finish, whatever happens, I'm going to finish this, right? So it's going to be, and you just put your head down and you're like, I have to do this, because this is going to be, if I do nothing else, at least I've got this on my resume that I was the assistant director on this film. And then you take it step by step. And I think that realizing, or trying to at least mentally go early on that you're going to take things a day at a time, and then a week at a time, and then a month at a time. You can't sort of presume that, oh my God, it's 1997 and we're going to 2 years. And it's like, if you take that pressure, it's just going to like, it'll kill you. So, yeah, I just took it a day at a time and looked at the larger picture, saying that by the end of this would be behind me. I would have learned a hell of a lot, and it would also be a stepping stone to, bigger things in your own thing.
Because one of the things that you really, you really spoke about was the fact that it's so important to find your tribe. You know, you met some of your long-time collaborators while you were an AD, while you were working on different films. There's Kunal Sharma, there's of course Ishika you met in school, Mahindra Shetty, Anurag Kashyap, Arpan Gaglani, Deepika Kalra, Aditya Kanwar. How does one form a tribe, a circle of trust when the competition is so high and the stress levels are peaking?
It is trust. I think the biggest thing, the operative word there being trust, right? It's like you, as if you want to be a filmmaker, you're going to go out there and you're going to trust, you're going to tell people a story, right? And that telling people a story business, it comes from you bearing your soul and bearing pretty much everything you've got to say, to sort of like say that this is what. Now you don't have to be the personality to go and say and to be out to be outgoing and that kind of stuff, but your work has to be the work where you're really you're bearing your soul. You're saying what's in the deepest part of your hearts to people, and you're also finding yourself through that process. And that comes from trust. That comes from sort of trusting your work and trusting your thing down to people. And that same element of trust comes from the fact that when you find people that you will collaborate with and that you will end up loving, and I'm saying in loving in a far more platonic sort of way, you have to. There is a trust relationship that builds between you and your collaborators. That is where you are bearing your soul in a sense. You are sort of like telling them things that you would not sort of normally tell everybody or anybody. So I think that builds. It's like you will. It's like a relationship, right? You are going to go out there. You are going to trust people. You're going to get your heart broken because somebody's going to be a jackass. But the other side is that you will make fast friends for life. You will make friends who will be there with you throughout. You'll have collaborators who will be there with you throughout. So yes, you have to trust people. You have to be able to tell them stories. You have to be able to sort of just understand them and have them understand you and know that you're working on something together. And that also comes from, I think, especially with filmmakers, a lot of that comes from there's a collective sort of like awe of the arts, of cinema, of just things that move you, of music, of those kind of things. So all my collaborators that I know that I'm working with today our start has always been the fact that we've always believed in something together, or we've liked the same thing. I mean, Ishika and me go back. I mean, the fact our friendship is now 30 years old, but it also started on the fact that we both realized we actually love the same music. It starts from there, and it sort of like builds into something else once you have that connection with somebody. And it's the same with every collaborator I've known after that, whether it's Mahendra or Siddharth Diwan as my collaborator cinematographers, even Swapnil as the latest, or whether it's with Anurag, being the first person where back in this is what 90 immediately.
You met him on Water, right? Water is.
Met him on Water immediately after Hum Dil Le Chuke Sanam. Started working on Water. He was a dialogue writer. I was executive assistant, so I was actually his wrangler basically. I had to call it, make sure that I have the dialogue written and such a given. There's another story I'll get to after. So, but so even though there's a Aarti, his ex-wife, who was his wife at that point in time, had been with me in XIC. So there's already familiarity when you know it, but that connection is made when you're like, have you seen this film? Have you seen that film? Have you seen this film? Have you seen that film? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And the next thing you know, you're building this bad thing because, oh my God, you're like, there's things that you've observed and you've seen and you don't know anybody else had even seen those things. And that's how those relationships start to get built. Yeah, but at the top, they're built, I think, through just a massive relationship of trust. And I think that trust also expands to your relationship with some of the things that I used to notice, especially, and this used to be especially with assistants who had worked with who I had worked with, Sanjay used to be very, very secretive about his work, right? So it's like, it's his work and it's secretive. Like, so within his group, you are privy to a certain bunch of secrets, but outside that group, you're not. A lot of assistants who wanted to make films would just take that in the wrong way. They'd be like, I have a script. I'm like, great, what's the story? No, I can't tell you the story. Well, if you can't tell me the story, how are you going to tell the entire world the story, right? You have to be able to sort of like go out there, and that's exactly part of filmmaking. And I think that this small sort of microcosm of what I'm sort of like, I guess, talking.
But Vic, that happened with you as well, right? You and Kunal took a trip to Kerala when you were writing, when you'd written Udaan, I think, and you know this was something you learned on the way from Venu. You want to tell us a little bit about that story?
Yeah, so Venu is this massively senior cinematographer. I had been working with him. I was the associate director on Barf, which was supposed to be Vishal Bharadwaj's first film, and this was before Hamdil and Devdas. And Barf never happened. Vishal went on to make Makadi. I then went on to come back to work with Sanjay on Devdas. And after the film finished, Kunal, who is my sound designer, even as we speak right now, he'll be sending me stuff to watch. Yes, that is Kunal, and that is in Kovalam, actually.
That is, yeah.
Yeah, so we went. We wanted a break because Devdas had been just like taking the lifeblood out of us and all that sort of stuff. So we said we're going to take a trip and we're going to go stay with Venu sir. And I spoke to him and all that sort of stuff. And we said, great. So this is the middle of the monsoon. We made sure we took a train down. We stayed there. Went to Munnar, and one day sitting in Munnar while we're sort of like drinking, Venu's like, so what's your story of your film? And I'm like, I'm not telling you. What's wrong with you? Why would I tell you that? It's my film. And I can't tell you. He says, no, you have to tell me. And I'm like, no, what do you mean I have to tell you? He's like, no, you're sitting in this room. There's only three of us over here. And he literally told me exactly the same thing that I'm saying right now. It's like, if you can't tell me a story, you're sort of like living with me, you guys over here. If you can't tell me, how are you going to tell it to an audience of, potentially lakhs of people who are going to watch your film? How are you going to even tell them that? I mean, that's different. He's like, it's not. Tell me the story. So, got me drunk eventually. And I did, and it was a very scary. It was probably the scariest moment of my life, where you're the teeth chattering because you're bearing your inner sort of like soul. You're bearing your soul and telling somebody what your deepest thoughts are, and you of course think they're absolute shit. And what kind of rubbish story is this? And then when you tell it, it's liberating for the simple reason that it's out of you now, whether it's good or bad. You sort of like puked it out, but. His feedback was fantastic, and this was when I was, this is Udaan, and I had a story of his father's son, and this fairly dark kind of like, this angry story about the two of them, and he gave me some pointers where he's like, this should happen, that should happen, and I really took those quite seriously, and I realized that you have to be able to sort of like trust people with your inner feelings, and sort of like have to, tell them this, and I think that's what, and I learned that a lot from Anurag as well. Because Anurag, I mean, if you know him, he's the kind of person who's telling everybody he can't keep a secret. Which is, of course, now he can. But back then he couldn't keep a secret. So he went with all his stories. I've heard all his stories. He's heard all my stories. We've both gone like, what do you think about it? What do you think about that? I realize that you have to be that kind of person because that's how you end up. If you're going out there and telling people that you want to be trusted, then they will also, or that you can trust. Whatever. There's that. So that bit with Venu was something which is super big learning for me.
Vikram, another thing before we talk about you starting to write or direct or finding a story that you wanted to tell, there is when you get onto set, how do you, as an assistant director or as somebody who's been hired to be on set, at that point of time to just work and learn and begin. How do you find what you want to do? Because what you want, what you can do, or what you learn during that process you can do, and the fact that people expect you to always choose the so-called more glamorous jobs like being the director or being, the captain of the ship. Everybody cannot become a director. How do you get secure with the feeling of knowing that this is what I can do?
I don't think you ever do that until, and so like I'm saying, in that moment you don't know that, and you don't know if you can do that. You don't know this is even for you because suddenly you're like, oh my god, being a director is all these things which you don't know if you have it in you for it at that point of time. So, which is why I think that so many of your best directors have actually had a big arc. It's not like you can be an assistant one day and be a director the next day. Most people I know, there's some rare people who manage to sort of like do that, but most I know have had a much larger arc where you are you have to tell a story. You have to also be technically proficient. You also have to know where to place the camera. You also have to know how to edit stuff. The biggest, I think the one of the most undervalued or underspoken things about being a director is the entire fact that you're actually a people's manager. It's just like it's not, at the end of the day, yes, there's a creative part of it where you have to be able to write and tell and blah, and blah, and blah, and blah, and direct actors and also manage the entire day. But there's also managing people is your biggest thing. How do you get the best out of actors? How do you get the best out of cinematographers? How do you get the best out of the art director? When do you be angry? When do you not be angry? When do you show love? When do you, I mean, how many hugs do you give a day? Literally, it comes down to sort of like that. And as a director, a lot of times, especially with close friends and that kind of stuff, you are giving a lot of hugs a day. You're basically like in that thing where you're just like, that is part of what sort of being a director is. But when you're an assistant, you're grappling with so much information at that point in time that you have no clue what this is going to come out of. So I remember finishing Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam. And yes, the fact that, okay, there's this beautiful moment at the end of it when we're seeing the married print, and it's like, oh my God, all that, the 2.5 years of work has been gorgeous and lovely. And I took a break after that. I went to what used to be, my family, my father used to work in a factory. We used to have a family house in Nasik. And I went there in the monsoons and I'm sitting there and it's just letting things drain out of you. And that's when there's a bit of like, okay, I want to be able to, that's an interesting story. Now, can I even go out there and direct the story? Now at that moment, 2.5 years later, you're looking back at, the time you've spent and the experiences you've had, and now you're trying to put two and two together and saying, can I now tell this story, knowing what I know about filmmaking, and knowing what I know about what it's going to take for me to be able to tell this story. And that's the seed of where it started. So this was what, 99, I had a seed of saying I want to tell this story. I didn't write that script till 2002, when I met Bhavani Iyer. And that's another sort of like, that's another tangent about self-worth and about being able to write, actually.
But Vikram, talk about that, because both your films, I mean, you knew you wanted to tell a story. The germ of the idea came to you, but you were very, very, you were diffident about putting pen to paper. What was that journey like?
I think it comes down to a lot of, and this is personally, this is just me, right? It comes down to two things. One is that is what I'm writing even worth, is it worth the paper it's written on, right? So there's two parts to it. I think one part of it is a self-esteem issue where you're like, okay, I don't know if this is any good. But also the thing is, and that's where the next lesson about being able to share this with people starts to come in after that. Like at that point in time, I didn't know that that's the way you sort of like do it. So, okay, I want to write this story. So what's the story? I'm going to write it. And you write. And you think that you're actually sort of like building something together. But who am I going to tell it to? So, and one of the big tricks, not tricks actually, one of the things that I remember everybody used to keep saying, that whole producer line, "Kitara one line kya hai?" And my film is so much more than a one line. How dare you ask me to encapsulate my film into a single line? I've realized over the years that that's actually something that you should be. You have to be able to, in your own head, be able to tell your film in one line. Right? That's how you'll be able to go, and that's the elevator pitch. That's the way you can actually sort of like tell people that. But that's the moment where there's all these thoughts in your head, and you don't know, okay, am I making it like this? Am I making it like that? Is it a comedy? Is it this? Is it that? So you're putting all those sort of like thoughts in. And you don't know you're supposed to tell anybody. So you're not telling anybody. And the next thing you know, you've gone and written so much stuff. And there's a big jumble in your head. And then finally you find somebody. So the first person, and I told Ishika about this, and she's like, yeah, it sounds interesting. And I'm like, okay, that's one person who says it sounds interesting, but how am I sort of like doing it? And then after that, when I met Anurag, and this is, when I've sort of like told him, and he said, what is it that you want to say? And I told him again in a very vague thing, this is my idea, and it's about this, it's about that, and blah, blah, blah. And I think it must have gone in from one come out the other. Since Bhavani said, "Mere ko bahut achhi writer hai." And then Bhavani was the first person, I think, in that who just patiently heard me out. She listened to me. She said, so what you're trying to say is this. And I'm like, huh. And I sort of found that. And through that process, I think, when you find like-minded people who are willing to sort of like hear you out and willing to sort of sit with you, and again, trust you, and you end up trusting them, which is when you sit together and have copious amounts of chai and just sit and talk about books, and you talk about movies, and you talk about that kind of stuff, and you find a partner to be able to sort of like, that's when everything that's inside you for that is going to start, coming out. and doing it. And even, so that was when I was writing that film. And even later, when I was writing Udaan, it was about. I always told Anurag the story, and I'm like, you write it, because I thought I couldn't write the story. And he kind of tallowed it, kept telling me, "हाँ मैं करूँगा." I think he was basically forcing me into a corner where like, "Fuck you, I want to write it myself." But even in that process, I remember Bhavani and me were that when I'm writing, the last leaf in Lootera, and a lot of it was. I would write through the day at home, she would write through home, and in the evening we'd meet up at her place, and I would tell her what I've done through the entire day. And I realized that process made my script so much better, because it would help me just keep the thing churning in my head, and I would like say that this is what I've done, this is what I wanted to do, and you're talking, you're trusting, your guard is not, you don't have a guard up, and I think as a writer and as a creator, it's very important, for you. In the long run, it's not about being a better filmmaker. It's just about as a filmmaker, just as a person, and this is going to be, I think, the best thing that you can do to keep your your spirits up and all that kind of stuff is just don't keep your guard up. It's just that let your guard down. Let people see who you are. Let people know who you are. I think that was one of the big lessons that I learned then.
Vikram, you wrote, there was another film called Bombay Talkies, not the Bombay Talkies that's being made right now, but there was Bombay Talkies, which Mr. Bachchan said yes to. Unfortunately, he has COVID right now. I hope he gets well soon. But he said yes to, and you couldn't cast the other person in the film, and you couldn't make it. You'd already written Udaan. The process was already on. And then you wrote Lootera. And then in 2007, because Udaan was not getting off the ground, Bombay Talkies didn't happen. You wrote some 7 or 8 screenplays, but the 2 that stayed were Udaan and Lootera. So, in terms of ideas, a filmmaker can get many ideas. Which are the ideas that stay? How do you sift through that? Because there's also a lot of noise from outside. Because when you're sharing, you share it with a lot of people. There's some people who would instinctively kind of, give you feedback. There's some people who would give you very market kind of feedback. But at that point of time, what does a creator do to kind of figure that this is the idea I need to stick with?
It's beyond the cerebral. It becomes your intimate relationship, with that material. Can you? Is it going to kill you if that material and that script never gets made? And if you feel it's going to kill you if it doesn't get made, then you have to make it, right? But if you can sort of like, yeah, I've written a script, it's in a cupboard, maybe I'll make it one day, maybe I won't make it one day, maybe I'm looking for inspiration, I don't give a shit, then it's fine, right? So there's 2 parts to this. One is that you want to, everything you write, you're going to sort of like spend a lot of time, quality time, and it's going to be a lot of churning. It's going to write it. Now, I wrote those things. I wrote all those scripts that I did in 2007 because nothing was happening. Right, my film wasn't happening. I was pretty determined not to get a job that's going to sort of like distract me from that. So yes, I'm lucky because I had a roof over my head and I had, right, and that kept me sustained in a sense. But it's just like, as a filmmaker, as a writer filmmaker, how do you make your skills better? The only way to make your skills better is by actually practicing them, which means you have to keep writing to be able to learn, and you have to keep making something to be able to learn. And I think that's what I was doing at that time. Is just constantly I was making absurd sort of documentaries with Ishika as my subject matter, And I think the greatest gift I've ever got in my life has been a video camera as a wedding present, which was just it was funny because like the wedding thing, like what do you want as a wedding gift? And everybody says you want a nice watch or something. No, I want a video camera. I think Ishika's parents are like, he wants what?
Lovely.
You come from the generation where it was expensive, you couldn't afford it, like even back then it's like 20 grand, 25 grand, like 25 grand is a lot of money, like, I can't afford it. That was my big wedding gift, and I went to town with that thing. Oh my god, I shot everything I could shoot. I mean, I shot, and we would do this thing where I would shoot a bunch of stuff, and then I'd go on Photoshop and I'd make these DVD covers. I would put them, print them and put them in a DVD boxes and make a DVD and make it, and we'd have like premiere night and stuff for that matter. But that was all of it. All of it was skills. It was basically learning skills and practicing skills. And the same with writing. It's like going out there and learning skills and practicing skills.
Vikram, you also spoke about, you said that, see, basically the thing is everybody doesn't start out as a filmmaker. You put in the time, you put in the work, you put in the rigor. But you also said that one of the things that that really kept, you spoke about sustenance. So you did have a roof over your head, but if you had to go out there and kind of stay connected with films till you were a director in waiting, your reputation that you built as a very sincere first AD, as a person who's great to have on the set, that held you in really good stead.
Yeah, that did. It really did, and I think that's one of the first. That's like it, in a way, it's sort of rule number one of when you're being an assistant director or you're being rule number one. Just when you're on a set, just work really hard, right? There's lots of subplot, sub points to that kind of stuff. But the thing is that when you work hard and people know that you're working really hard, you will get reps. So all my work that I've actually got after that, all the reputation that's built up, all the doors that opened for me to be able to walk into someone, to be able to pitch the script in the first place, comes from the reputation that one is built up by being an assistant director who people know, yeah, this guy works hard. He's diligent, he gets the job done. And that sort of stuff. So working on Hamdil got me the work with Deepa Mehta because Jamu Sugandh was the producer of both films. Deepa was looking for an AD. He recommended me straight there. So that's how that happened. It's because of that when I met Anurag, and Anurag also had heard of the work. So he was like, okay, why don't you do work on Panch with me? On Panch is where I meet Sanjay Leela, who's the producer of Panch, who's now the producer of Andadun. He was the EP back then. He's seen me work. He's doing Barf with Vishal. He's recommended me to Vishal to become an associate director. That's how I've worked with Vishal. Through this, you're finding your tribe, right? All the people that I'm going to eventually know and work with and build these relationships with and all that sort of stuff is built up through this entire process. But it all starts because people know that you are 100% dedicated to your job. And that's where the entire reputation starts to come from. So yeah, you have to, and that then helps you open that door when you you call up somebody and say, hi, my name is so and so and I want to pitch you a script and I've worked with so and so and so and so and so and so. There is that door is 1% open. It's never, I don't think, and that comes from the work you've done. I think it's not like you've got that much more of an advantage of somebody else who's walking in blindly, but the fact that you've done a little bit of work and have, a certain amount of reputation, that helps you sort of just that little bit that door's open. Now now you have to kick the door. Basically, after a point, how do you kick the door that's another journey.
But Vikram, what also happens is when you're on your journey, the people around you are also on their journey, right? And you have a lot of peers who started off like you, who are working hard, who are traversing their own journeys. And how do you sort of keep the blinders on and not get affected by what's happening to your peers? Somebody gets a film before you, somebody gets a break before you, somebody gets to make the film before you. How do you keep yourself centered when that happens?
The number one thing that you have to sort of come back to before that is who you are. Who are you as a person? Who are you and what are you trying to say as a person? And you have to find a certain amount of comfort level with the person you are and the stories you want to tell. Because it is hard. When you've worked super hard and you've seen somebody else who started being an assistant 5 years after you, getting a break to do a film before you, it can be really, really it can be hugely disappointing because you really feel that, yeah, maine itna kaam kiya and I've done so much, and why is that person getting a chance before me? Nothing wrong with what they've done. But the thing is that, and sometimes, yes, there's been lots of times when you're like, yaar, kya itni commercial picture and all that sort of stuff. You go through those processes. The question is, it comes back to who are you, and if you're in an industry where the box that has been created has been this commercial one size fits all box, and if you don't want to be in that box, then you have to struggle, yeah. Then you know you're going to have to struggle, and you know that struggle is going to be even harder than what it would be then if you're going to say, no, I want to be in the box. You don't want to be in the box. You're choosing not to be in the box. Now you have to struggle. Now you want to get in the box, but you get in your own way. Now you want to climb over that wall and jump inside that, right? So now be prepared for it. Be prepared for people who are going to be sort of like making their films way before you. Be prepared for people having successful films way before you. Be prepared for a lot of rejection. I think that's one of the things that that I've learned through the career. And I think one of the things that I always advise sort of like, starting filmmakers is that be prepared for rejection. You're going to get a lot of rejection. It's going to happen. No one is going to, it's so rare that people are really going to just like embrace you right in the beginning and say that we love your script and we want you to do a film and here is 20 crores. It's never going to happen. You're always going to have rejection. People are not going to understand, you're not going to know, because at the same time, you are also going to grow as a filmmaker. You are also going to grow as a person, and your work is going to get more and more refined. I have never seen today, like, first time filmmakers coming to me with a script which is like, oh my God, this is brilliant, and I want to sort of like jump in and do that, right? It very, 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 very rarely happens. So you have to be prepared for rejection. You have to be prepared for people not getting you or pushing you, but you can't let that get you down. You can't let that sort of like, push you or make you or get all that self-doubt come. And the only way self-doubt will not come in is that you really know what you want to say. And that's, I think, one of the, because there's filmmakers I know even today who don't know what they want to say. And that, it makes them bitter and it makes them angry and it makes them, because they have the skills, but they don't, they truly don't know who they are. And I think that that's something that you have to know right in the beginning. Because once you're secure in that, and therefore once you found your tribe, and once you found your trust levels with people, now you're in a place which is secure, now you're mentally secure, and now you can be able to push it and say, no, I really believe in this, and I truly believe in this. I'm going to push this to whatever, no matter what, people are going to say. You have to sort of like know that. To answer your question.
So you have to basically find your voice. So I'm going back to where you started. You worked with people like Sanjay Leela Bhansali and Deepa Mehta and Anurag Kashyap. How do you find your own path when the people that you're working with have such defining voices? Because all your training is under them, or everything that you've learned is under them. How does one start to begin to know what their voice is?
It takes time. It takes time, and honestly, you will know it when one day you will read something or listen to a piece of music or think of an idea or all those sort of things. So immediately after I worked with Sanjay, I was seeing it through his eye. I was seeing a sort of filmmaking that came in through that eye. And then when I started working with Deepa Mehta, I started to see, okay, that's the way of being able to do it. And you write like this, and you write like that. And then with Anurag, it's more about being able to sort of like see just the complete bravado that he's that he's got, and then instinctively you start to say, okay, that's what I'm going to take from Bhansali, that's what I'm going to take from Deepa, that's what I want to take from Anurag. These are the skills that I've learned from everybody.
So Vikram, with these mentors, like how did they shape you? You're a mentor today. What did you take away from them that has shaped you as a mentor?
So here's the danger, right? One of the dangers is not trying to please your mentors a bit. I always find that a bit dangerous. Like don't try and become exactly like your mentor. You have to be an individual and you have to be your own person, right? Easy saying that, it's far more difficult to sort of like to become your person. So yes, looking at my mentors, from each of them, I know that at that point in time. So from Sanjay, I think it's taking the art of prep, how to work on on something beforehand, how to sort of like prepare for your film, how to be able to sort of like structure a bit of a scene, how to be able to add background music to a lot of stuff. So a lot of those skills I've taken from Sanjay. From Deepa, the thing that I still do today is about the one thing that I saw with her was about how to block. That she always gets her actors first thing in the morning and just blocks with them. And I think that that's a wonderful thing that very few people actually do, and it's something that I thought was absolutely fantastic. Saw it, imbibed it, still till today I sort of like do that. With Anurag, it's like, okay, don't over prepare. Don't don't cook it so much that you've actually sort of like ruined the meat of it, right? Just like just jump in sometimes, do things, be spontaneous, work under budget, work being able to, and like, and again, trust your actors to be able to sort of like deliver to you. Don't over direct them, don't do that kind of stuff. You pick up, I think it's, and I've done that. It's not just these three. It's also from someone like Manu Gargi, who I worked with beforehand. Who was again somebody who, to be able to see things in a very sort of like clean sort of way. So yeah, it's like you pick up something from everybody, and that's and but again, at that moment you don't know it. You need some amount of distance from it, and then you're gonna. It's sort of like it goes into the vault at the back, right? Look, it's what I've learned. And then when you are finally making what you want to make, and that's when that thing calls out to you. So Udaan actually sort of like that kind of story says, okay, this is what I really want to say. This is what I want to say. And then it also comes, and this is, one of the other things is that never stop watching movies, never stop reading books, never stop doing that kind of stuff, because that's really where your skills are going to come from there. A lot of your learnings are going to come from there. And then it all, at some point in time, it'll all kind of, come together. But it's it's never going to be like, you're never going to have a eureka moment. You're always, and in fact, even after making Udaan, after making Lootera, after making that kind of stuff, there's still moments where I end up feeling a certain amount of insecurity, a certain amount of that. Like you have to find, you will keep finding yourself. There's never eureka.
Vikram, you've said in a bunch of interviews that you were determined to make Udaan because as your first film, because you wanted that to be your voice. You wanted to enter the world as a director with that voice. What did you mean by that?
It's a story that I really wanted to tell, and I think there was this one part of me saying that I want to make a coming-of-age film, but I want to be able to make this film. Why should I have to compromise? And it's that there is that. You're naive, right? Back then, you don't. There's so many things, and I think I'm still naive in a lot of ways, even now, about like why can't a certain kind of movie work? But back then, that innocence is what is sort of like pushing me to say that no, I want to make this. And there was opportunities there saying, okay, if you go and you end up making that film, you want to go to that company, and you've got the skills and you can end up sort of doing that. But today I have the objectivity to say that that's because I think as a filmmaker, you must, at least in your first few films, you must have something to say about the story. It comes back to basically like, what is it that you want to say as a filmmaker, right? Having a skill set is one, but having a story to tell is another thing altogether. Like, that's when you put those two things together is when you actually want to go. And I think with Udaan, it was like that. It's like, I want to tell this story. Sure, I could go somewhere and be a director and get a job and do another film, but that's really not like, my heart wasn't in that. My heart was in saying that I want to tell this story. And I could see it clearly, right? I could see the entire thing. I had seen every scene in my head, and I knew the moments, and I knew everything in my head. And it was so clear. And I was like, why would I want to do anything else when this is entirely, something that's...
You wanted to start with something you love. What did Udaan change? I'm not talking about the critical, applause that you got. I'm not talking about the opportunities that you got. I'm talking about you as a person who was now on set directing his own film. You were finally running with the horses. You were doing what you wanted to do. How did that change you as a creator? What did it bring to the table as far as your internal process, internal insecurities, internal fears are concerned?
It validated a lot of what you actually, what one actually sort of like put into, and that validation came, of course, like a little later. Like through the entire process, you are saying that, okay, this is how I want to shoot it, and this is where camera and blah 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 blah. So one is that it's validating the moment when it's coming for you, when you're like, okay, seeing it happen. You're seeing the validation of like, okay, this. So one validation is the fact that, okay, the material I wrote has actually got money behind it, so like do it. So you're kind of pinching yourself at that point in time, because you're like, shit, someone actually is trusting me with their money to make it, and what if it's going to go all downhill? But chalo, there's some amount of validation there. There is a certain amount of trust, and you've got this money, and now you're going to go out there and make this film. And then you go out there and you make it, and then you put it together. And I think the very first screening that we had for more than like 5 people, which is like some pretty people together watching it. And now when people are laughing at the jokes at that point of time, and people are sort of like doing that, that's your validation that comes back and saying, chalo, what I had set out to do when I was writing that script back then, those many years ago, is now validated right now. is something that gives you the confidence to go and say, "Chalo, at least I have एक तो बना ली, अभी देख लेते हैं दूसरी बना लेंगे," you know. And I think every filmmaker makes a film to make another. I think that's what we're always doing. Is the fact that you make a film as a finish and chalo next, you know, like I want to go better, I want to go different, be challenged a bit more, or you know, unshackle yourself a little bit more. So yeah, I think it's more it comes to just being able to build your confidence as a creator. That's what Udaan did for me.
But Vikram, what happened on Lootera? Like Lootera is gorgeous. You'd already done Udaan. There was experience. People had full faith in you. And yet while making the film, you went through crippling anxiety. I mean, I don't see it, and I rewatched it. I don't see it in any of the shots, thank God. But there were things you wanted to fix, but you couldn't because you were frozen with fear, self-doubt. Looking back at that time, would you have done things differently because you went through hell when you were making Lootera?
Looking back at the time, I would have, and I think I tried. I would have got two passes. One is get help on the actual script. Like I thought there was something wrong here, and I couldn't put a finger on it. And I remember waking up, I think one morning, a month after the film released, and I'm like, oh, that's what I should have done. Of course, it was like by then it was 2 years too late. So yeah, one part of it was being able to sort of like look at the material objectively and saying, what is it here that's niggling me? What is it that's actually sort of like troubling me? What do I solve over here? What's the problem, right? And that's when at that point in time, I didn't have the tribe of, you know, the Writers Club or, you know, Sceptic Tank that we actually formed, you know, a little, which we'll get to, where I could actually sort of like throw it to a group and saying, guys, something was wrong with this. You know, what is it that you're feeling? And let's be honest about this kind of stuff. So back then I didn't, but I also didn't at that point in time know that I could actually, and my anxiety was actually that point I was sleeping 3 hours a night and I didn't know what to do. And I didn't know back then that you could actually sort of like, you know, go to therapists and sort of like talk to somebody, or just talk to somebody about the fact that you're having these sort of like things and sort of like talk it through. And I think that's something that I learned much later. Which is, you know, helped me a hell of a lot. But I didn't know it back then. And I just didn't know who I could talk to about this. Like Ishika was trying really hard to understand. She's like, okay, what's going on? Talk to me what's going on. And I couldn't really, you know, express myself about that kind of stuff. I was feeling that I can't really tell. I didn't want to tell Shetty or Aditya, any of these people about this kind of thing. I'm like, okay, they're working on the film. I don't want to burden them with my problem. So I was like, let's just, you know, keep that. They all knew something was wrong, but I was like, okay, let's not burden people. I tried talking to Anurag a couple of times, but I realized that his process is entirely different from my process as of like doing it. So I was going through that. Eventually, it went away. Eventually. And I think just by being able to, but what it did make me do is it made me really, you know, look at everything that I was doing with a far more critical eye, and you just worked a little bit harder on just making sure you have the perfect shot because you want to be completely satisfied before moving on to anything else. So yeah, from a creative perspective, it in a certain sort of way, it helped. I don't think, honestly, I mean, that anxiety was of course much higher level. I don't think that kind of anxiety ever goes away on a shoot, because you're always biting your nails. You're always wondering, what's my shot? What am I trying to say? Especially at early processes before you get sort of jump into shoot, there's a lot of that still happens. And I've learned over a period of time that the best way to sort of like deal with that, the best way to deal with any of that sort of stuff is make sure that your script is 1,000% perfect before you've even walked in. Nothing is ever perfect, but 1,000% the way you want it to be, and that you're
happy with it. You're not having doubts on set about what you're doing.
Yeah. And even after Lootera, I'm like, I don't think that even Bhavesh and Trap were perfect scripts, but at least I knew what the issues were. I knew how to deal with them. That taught me how I was supposed to be able to sort of like do it, what the flaws were, how I could work around the flaws, and all that. But yeah, during that time, the process was pretty bad.
But Vikram, you know, this is a great learning, because a lot of creators who've done a bunch of films have always come back and said this many times to everyone who's starting out or on their second film, that till you're completely satisfied with everything, don't go ahead with it, because it's always going to stay with you. If something is niggling, fix it, then move forward. um so I'm moving forward with something that you formed with a bunch of really talented people. It was a Sunday script club called the Sceptic Tank. I love the word. And these are all writers and directors who are very successful now, but they were on their own struggles, on their own journey at that point of time when Vikram took the initiative with Akshat Verma and formed this club. And it had Anvita Dutt, who's just had a very successful, first step as director with Bulbul. Devashish Makhija, Neeraj Gairwan, Sudeep Sharma, Navdeep Singh, Arpita Chatterjee, Abhishek Chaube. They were all members of this particular tank. And so how does this kind of community building help, Vikram?
So it started as a, I realized when I was talking to you, I was looking through the pictures that I actually had, and I realized that one of the reasons it also started was because I had so many filmmakers coming to me and saying that, okay, here's something which is because I was at Phantom and, as a producer, and you're having guys come to you and saying, and you're like, okay, there's a great idea here, but there's, something, and I'm maybe not the person to be able to tell you, but what if we workshopped it like an unofficial sort of like workshop? That's where it started. But it also started like Arpan Gaglani actually, who
Crayon.
the animator, Crayon, right? So a lot of his was like, okay, there's a lot of animation stories that we can actually tell, but how do you actually sort of like tell these stories? So it was a bit of both of those kind of things, which helped us, wanted us, yes, that's Arpan. Oh my God, that's. So we started this as an exercise for a bit of both. Like, let's throw some stories, let's throw some ideas in this and see what we can end up creating. But also at the same point in time, let's get a script. So like the very, very first script I think that we got into it was Deepika Kalra's husband, Arun Sukumar, had a script that he wanted to turn into a feature film. And that came into the group, and then we sort of like discussed how to sort of like do that. And then as we we did this pretty often. We did it with Masan, we did it with Atul Mongia, there was Gautam Kishan Chandani, there was Amit Masurkar. A lot of filmmakers came, and a lot of them hated it because it was like, oh my God, they're laying themselves bare to 8 writers who are basically going to go and saying this is wrong or whatever. But we try to be as constructive as possible, but it's not always easy, and I think it takes a lot. And I realized that afterwards we all realized that maybe we can understand the process of this, where we appreciate the idea of someone being brutal with our scripts and really tearing it apart, because we know that will help us build it up better. But some writers just don't. They can't accept that fact. But what it did do is that it helped create a bit of a tribe. It helped us create a very, very close friendship between a whole bunch of us, which still exists till today. Where we will still sort of send material to everybody else and still sort of like show edits and all that kind of stuff. That's what it was at that point in time. Is that we were actually doing it. It became a Sunday therapy session in a weird sort of way. Like we would really look forward to these Sunday sessions, because it would be at the old Phantom office. We had a backyard. We had 2 dogs. We had unlimited chai supply coming in over there, and we just sit there at the back, and you spend the week reading a script. You come there on Sunday, you spend an hour or 2 hours with somebody else, and the remaining 3 hours is all about you're either venting about certain things, or you're talking about creative, or you're becoming a support system to somebody within that group who's going. And I think that each of us at some point in time in that group were having. I was making Lootera. Navdeep was trying to get NH10 made at that point in time. He was sort of like doing that. Dave Makhija was writing a bunch of stuff, and he hadn't gotten to making his short film kind of thing. Anvita was still finding herself, like this. I remember, like and Bulbul was something that she had a story of, and we constantly told her like, make this, write this. Why aren't you doing it? And Bulbul was one of the first scripts and films that we actually got at the club, where we would where we actually sort of like gave feedback. And all of us put, and Chaube put Dedishkia inside over there, and Akshat put Kalagandi, and but it worked as a beautiful place for us to be able to just throw ideas around and really sort of like help each of us go through, because and as a filmmaker is there, right? You always feel you're going 1 step forward and 2 steps back. That's the journey of filmmaker, because you always you have an idea and you write a script and you go somewhere, and an actor rejects it or a producer rejects it, and you're taking 2 steps back, and there's that bit of self-doubt, like, okay, something wrong with the material? Is there something wrong with, am I approaching the wrong people? Should I even make this in the first place? And I think what what the group did is help with being able to look at that in an objective sort of way where, yes, one of it is like the pat on the back and saying, don't worry, you're fine, everybody else is an idiot, you're okay. But also to be able to really, it became a group where all of us could actually sort of open up and say, okay, so what really is wrong? What really is wrong with this kind of situation? Like, should I even sort of like go there? And then also, okay, maybe you should talk to that producer, maybe you should talk to that writer, maybe you should sort of like do that. So on a creative level, it helped us, do to just get better, and also just on a friendship level, it just really built and helped us just through those days.
Vikram, does it still exist in any form? The Sceptic Tank?
Oh yeah, everybody got too busy. I think that at that point, because we were all so Vela, I think really because I think I was the one making Lootera back, at that point in time. So like, the office just became a natural place to sort of like come to. Then I think once Navdeep started shooting NH10, so which meant Navdeep and Sudeep were gone. And it just didn't feel in. And then it never became a situation because then they were shooting, then Abhishek was shooting, and then I was shooting. And then somebody or the other was always shooting at that time. And then so it never became a situation where, okay, everybody's free to be able to do this on a regular basis. So, yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't exist there. I wish it did.
I hope you can start it again. It's a great idea. And I think I think it can be scaled up. We'll talk about it later. But
it's something that filmmakers should. I'm saying as an example, they need to find their own tribe. Every filmmaker must find their own tribe. Find people you trust. Find people who you have no shame about sort of telling your stories to. No shame about no shame about bearing your soul. No shame about asking for help. Everybody has to have that kind of that situation where that trust level is what's going to just help you just do better things.
Vikram, you also said that now now that you're helming projects not only as a director but even as a producer, and you run a company, people come to you who are working under you with lots of problems, and just because of the fact that you've been possibly in every person's shoes. Every role that is played on that set, you've been there, the insecurities, you have empathy, but is that too much information, or does that get you to do a better job to manage your team?
I think you have empathy, right? What happens is that when you've been through every job and you've been the insecure assistant director who's looking for validation from your boss, you know what's wrong with that. You've been the filmmaker who has struggled. You've been the writer who's hit a wall. You've been the guy who's written a shitty script. You've been the guy who's written a good script. You've been a producer who's fucked up. You've been a producer who's helped. You've been a producer who's been in a situation where you've done the right things, but there's been misunderstandings. I've been through all those things. I've been that person to everywhere. So now I can sort of like be empathetic with every single person I know who's going through exactly that. Right? And it's not just about saying, okay, I know the answer. It's more about saying, here's what you're maybe going to face. And So what happens a lot of times is that on my team, there's people coming in saying, but that person said this. And I'm always going, look at it through their shoes, be in their position and understand what they're going through this point of time. Right? And you must be able to sort of like look at everybody because everybody has a problem. So unless somebody's a complete asshole, in which case you will know it. But most of the time that's not the case. Most of the time it's just like they are in their shoes, and only they are in their shoes, and only they can fill their shoes, and they know what situation they're going through. So because I've been through so many of those, I've stood in so many of those shoes, I can be able to sort of like empathize with a lot of people. And I think that experience today just helps me with producers and with Mom and Arya and people who work closely with me. I can be able to do that. It's not. I mean, it's not. It does take up a lot of your time. I do think that one of the struggles today is about being able to find, and I'm still struggling today to be able to find like what is creative time, what is production time, what is somebody else's time, what is family project time, and then what's actually family time. I think that what tends to happen is that as creative people is like your mind is constantly occupied. and you need to be able to sort of like take those breaks, and you need to be able to sort of like be objective about your stuff. I still struggle with that. I'm constantly told that I work too much, or that I'm always thinking about my work.
Vikram, Phantom broke up under charges of sexual assault against Vikas Bahel. You have a new company now, Andolan Films. You're the founder, and you're doing a multitude of projects currently. What was this period of destruction and rebuilding like?
It was really hard. It was really hard because I think when it did happen, and it came during a moment when I think there was a massive wave. Not only of at that moment of articles and write-ups and cases, not just in India but all around the world, of Me Too, where a lot of people and a lot of men had been called out for their behavior and stuff. And part of you is just saying, okay, this is unfair to me, but part of you also knows that it's a purging that is absolutely necessary and is absolutely required. But you're suddenly in the line of fire on a lot of stuff. There was a lot of accusations thrown, at me individually, which sort of like started to really affect me in a certain sort of way. And I think for the first couple of months after, when the accusations came out and stuff, it was hard. It was hard to be able to deal with it. It's hard to be able to, because you're suddenly like, oh my God, is my career over? Is the future going to be? How do I bounce back from this and all that sort of stuff? And I think the good thing again over there, and this comes from, again, it's the same. It's a reputation that you have built up as a creator, it's a reputation you build up as a person that really helps you in those matters. And then people know that, okay, we trust you, and we trust that you're fine. We trust that you're going to do a good job, and we'll continue to sort of like do that. And I think, but it takes time for that to come back together. I think the first couple of months is like, okay, where are my friends? It's almost like, what happened? Please, somebody help me, love me. It's like some of it you go through that process, but you also have to, in a sense, in your mind, know that what you're doing is right. You have to sort of like, so yeah, it's not it's not easy, but and then I think the main thing after that is being able to sort of like say, okay, I need to get back to work, and finding that the energy to come back to work is always very hard. Just the mental state to come back to work is always difficult. But then what happens is that when you've been someone who's been working so much, it also becomes fairly easy to slip back into it and sort of like distract yourself. So the work became a good distraction. And which was good in a sense. Some of the stuff is still not over. There's still a lot of like things that that need to be sorted out, and paperwork and all that sort of stuff. So you tend to sort of like learn to know how to deal with it on a case by case basis, as opposed to sort of like letting it like become a massive part of your life. So that's in the last year and a half, that's actually been a massive learning for me. And again, one of this, it comes back to how do you keep yourself positive, is the fact that you have to focus on the positive. There are going to be those negatives that are going to be over there. Deal with them. Don't let them sort of like, don't sweep them under the rug. Don't do that kind of stuff. But don't let it eat you up, because really that's not helping anyone. If you're letting it eat you up, you have to be able to look forward. And
Vic, anything that you would do differently? Any internal learnings from the whole experience?
A few. Yeah, I don't think I can talk about like those in a public forum, because it's just there's things that I can talk about privately with with my partners and stuff, where I know that, okay, these are things we should have done. These are things we should have done the right way. These are things we should have done. I think it's more about how we dealt with it sort of collectively, how we dealt with it individually. Yeah, but yeah, basically.
My last question before I open the house out for questions is that you formed a new company, and this is your company. What is the creative vision that you have for Andolan Films?
I find this such a strange question to answer.
Because the thing is that it's a company you're helming. You must have some vision or some kind of a aspiration for it in terms of the kind of projects you want to do, the kind of culture that you want to foster, in it. So just a little bit about that.
So I don't have a boilerplate on this. So which again, people are like again. So it's look. I mean, Andolan was formed essentially, I think, to be able to sort of like create. So okay, I mean, the answer to this actually comes from where Phantom was formed. Right? Phantom was formed, and as a collective, where we started to say that okay, we want to be able to make the films we want to make, but also to be able to help other filmmakers make the film that they want to make. And we did succeed. We did succeed for a large time. And I think that to think about the fact that Phantom only lasted for almost like for just less than 7 years is actually, it boggles my mind sometimes. I'm like, wow, it feels like much longer, because we also made a ton of films during that period. But personally, what Phantom did is that I realized that I was actually producing a lot more than I was directing. And while that was lovely, and we actually managed to go out there and be very proud of some of the films we've actually made. There's Masan, there's Uttar Punjab, there's NH10. There's so many cool films that we've gone and done that. It was great. But I also think that what it did was that it left me a little bit feeling that I should have done more myself because I'm a creative person. I'm not a producer, really. Right? So Andolan was sort of like formed with the idea of saying that, and again, one of the other, of being, so Andolan was basically formed with the idea of saying that I want to be able to sort of create stuff, and again, taking the learnings from the Sacred Games and from all the films we sort of like done, to know that let's make stuff which is future-proof. Let's make stuff which we feel is going to last forever. But let's also make stuff which we really, really care about and we really, really want to, put a lot of passion into and getting made. I think one of the things at Phantom was that at a certain point in time, it felt a little bit like a job when you were producing, and I'd never wanted that to actually. I didn't want anything in Andolan to feel like I'm doing a job. So the first thing, and one of the main creative rules as such, and there's no such rule as such, is the fact that if none of us really feel that we really want to spend the next year or year and a half of our lives really investing ourselves into a bit of material, whether it's creative, whether it's creating that kind of stuff, then let's not even do it. Let's walk away from it and sort of like do that. So really, that's the only sort of like, thing we're looking for. Basically walk into anything with a lot of passion, a lot of love, and wanting to know that we really want to do this. And we really want to invest ourselves into it. And again, this has come from, it's another tribe in a certain sort of sense. Mom and Ishika are both directors in the company, but Abhay Korane, who wrote Bhavesh Joshi with me, and I, again, just someone who I really connected with, and we find that we both of us have a great. He's a creative producer and development person there. Reed Nilura is another one, and Arya, who's been my producer on Sacred Games, who's like the person I'm fighting with the most in life. The tribe. This is the new tribe, and we all feel the same way about the company.
Vikram, best of luck with that tribe, and I hope that there are lots of tables that you and your tribe create for lots of new people who want to break in and provide the kind of support that every newcomer, every person with a dream or ambition needs. I'm going to open the house out for questions. There are lots of questions here. I want to start with Priyanka Shah.
Hi, Vikram sir.
Hi.
My question was, when you're writing a character, you're essentially giving birth to it, and it goes through a series of feedback as people read it and stuff like that. But when you hand it over to an actor, how much does their interpretation or perception of the character influence the character on paper?
It does, of course it does, because your character sort of like is playing the part that you've sort of like written. They have to bring their interpretation to it. You cannot presume that someone. Someone said this. Nawaz actually said this to me very, very. Where he said that one of the things that you end up doing is that as an actor, you're leaving. In your performance, you must always feel that you've left a little bit of your blood, sweat, skin, whatever it is behind on that screen, and then sort of like gone on from there, right? That's as an actor, and you have to allow the actor to do that, because if they don't, they're always going to feel that something wasn't quite sort of like there yet. So, if you're asking this question from the point of view of saying that, okay, as a filmmaker, does it even belong to you anymore? I mean, if it's coming from a point of view of like, is someone's interpretation different from my interpretation? It's okay if it is, because actors will they will bring that they will bring their interpretation, and you have to respect that, and you have to sort of embrace that, actually, if that's the question you're asking.
So, hello Vikram sir. My question for you would be: you have worked as a director on a multitude of films, which spans genres from a young adult coming-of-age film to a superhero film. Do you think every director has his comfort zone, and if there are, how do you transcend genres and get out of comfort zones?
Look, I think every director definitely has a comfort zone, right? So even within my sort of like genre spanning, my comfort zone, I realize, are like these quiet, silent scenes, which which I find a lot of comfort in. Like anything that's non-dialogue, I love. No problem with that, right? I've also found that I really like action a lot, so I started to sort of like do that. You will have to. One of the things that I've also sort of like had to sort of like learn over a period of time, and be able to analyze over a period of time, is that there are films I like to see, and there are films that I think I want to make, and I think that you have to really, I mean, the finding the balance between that, and finding the fact that to be able to make films that you also want to see is something that I've found that I'm still sort of like trying to sort of like find that balance. Anyway, so coming back to your question, is that yes, there's a comfort zone every director has. You look at Tarantino's work, and there you can see that he has a comfort zone. You look at Anurag's work, there's a comfort zone. Look at Raju Irani, there's a comfort zone sort of like right there. Don't be afraid of embracing your comfort zone if there is that. And I think that that's something that every director should sort of like should know. And then, but you must know your comfort zone. You have to sort of like first of all find out what it is you're comfortable sort of like doing. What is it that you have an affinity to, and then do it. And I think a long part of your career goes in just sometimes I'm still finding myself. I'm still finding what my true comfort zone is. Like, am I a genre buff a little bit more than I actually sort of like? And because I like all kinds of movies. But really, what's the one I'm going to run to the movie theater to watch first? I've started to find that that's actually the genre stuff. So now I'm really sort of like saying, okay, I should be making more genre things. So I am going in that direction slowly. That's my comfort zone. And I'm trying to find it. After 26 years, I'll get my Lifetime Achievement Award and say I still haven't found my comfort zone.
It's okay, Vikram. It benefits us if you're slightly uncomfortable. We'll make more films. Vikram, I'm going to take a few Facebook questions and then come back to the Zoom chat. There's Parvati Thiruvot who wants to ask you, how do you take critical analysis of your work that you've spent so much on? How do you handle it?
You have to be able to look at it constructively. And I think a lot of it comes from the intention of the person who is either telling it to you or writing it right down, right? Once you can... With a lot of critics, and I think if I have to look at a certain amount of critics, and I'll talk about the good ones. I mean, for people like, whether it's Baddy, whether it's Rajiv, whether it's Anu, a lot of people, there's a genuine love they have for cinema. There's a genuine love they have for the art. So when their criticism is also meant to be constructive, and you know it. So there is you have to take that, knowing that in their hearts they're not trying to. They are trying to just make your work and make it better and have that bit of what if, right? There are critics who can't have that sort of empathy towards work, and they want to be able to say, okay, this is wrong, not be constructive. Now you have to also be able to know the fact that they are going to sort of like do that, and this is the way they are going to be, and there's nothing that you can do that's going to stop them from being that. And again, the empathy comes from the fact that I've also been a critic when it comes to bashing somebody's film, and I've also sort of done that. Maybe the words that I've said has also hurt somebody in the past. So what you sow is what you reap in a weird sort of way. I mean, it sounds very sort of like fatalist kind of saying that. But I don't hold it against people who are going to trash my film. I don't sort of like do that kind of thing. And you have to know that. You have to know that some people are going to want to trash it because that's just the way, or that's the extreme reaction that your film caused in them. That they want to sort of like do that, or that's their job, or whatever it is. But try and look at every criticism as something being constructive. Maybe there's a grain of truth in what people are sort of like saying. Maybe this is an issue. Maybe I should have seen it this way. Maybe I should have sort of done it that way. I've tried to start doing that. of course, sometimes it's like at least immediately after the release of a film or immediately after something, I just do not see reviews because you're too close to the material to be able to really have that sort of distance. So today I can open up and see review something that's released a year ago or 2 years ago. But I always try. I mean, I think short answer that I always try and just presume that there is something there that is going to be said. But you can always read through the intention of the piece at some point in time and know whether it's something that you really want to take seriously or know something that's just turn the page, walk away from it.
But Vic, what about? I mean, this is critics who the analysis is coming from. But what about analysis from peers, analysis from people around you? Criticism from people who are close to you, people who are contemporaries. How do you handle that?
Because they're contemporaries, and because if they're contemporaries and I trust them, and there's a friendship sort of like over there building, I have no problem taking anything. Normally, what would happen is that I will always show those people the film or the material before it's come to a stage where it's too much, I can't do anything about it. I think there's always that's what we've always sort of like done. Is like you show your film to enough people where you can actually get feedback. I mean, people read the script before you can get feedback. So you're not being in a situation where, I wish you had told me this. You know what I mean? So that's one of the things I always find very strange about going to people's trials and stuff like that. Like, hey, picture dekh lo, and then you're like, kaisi lagi? And I'm like, what do you mean to say? Does anything I say is going to help you change your film? No, no. So why am I even saying?
What is the
Yeah, but if it's even if I haven't done that, I think when you're showing your film to people that you know or you trust or or you're friends with and your peers and stuff like that, no, you have to take that criticism with the knowledge, knowing the fact that they're only being constructive. What they're saying, they have to have, you have to allow them their point of view. You can't defend. One of the things we used to actually sort of talk about in the Sceptic Tank was the fact that when we're listening to feedback, don't defend yourself in the moment. Never defend yourself in the moment. Just listen. Let people tell you what they feel. Just imbibe it. Listen to them. And then afterwards, if you need to, then you can form a defense afterwards. But don't immediately defend your intention, because if your intention is not on the paper, then your intention is not sort of come through in your material. Or if it's not in the film, then your intention. So you can't talk about मेरा intention ये है, मेरा intention ये था. अगर कागज पे नहीं है, it's not there at all. And you have to sort of like be aware of that.
The next question is from Swati Chog. Swati wants to know what are some major pitfalls to avoid for filmmakers when working on their first feature.
Oh, pitfalls to avoid. Wow. Look, you have to. It's never going to be a perfect situation, right? You're never going to be able to get, and maybe you can, right? But the perfect situation is find a producer who genuinely believes in the material that you're trying to make. Number one, and they're not only doing it for the sake of saying, "Chalo, yeah, there's a financial sort of like reason." They have to believe in what you're, especially if you're going out there and making something unique and something different. You have to find a producer, number one, who sort of like believes in it, and then find a crew who's not going to come in and get into sort of like ego tussles and a lot of that sort of stuff, right? So again, find people. Work with people who you trust. Work with people who trust you. Once you've done that, and once you've got a producer who really is doing it for the sake of it, then a lot of those pitfalls, a lot of any other smaller pitfalls, and those other smaller pitfalls are like, yeah, you have to cast right, you have to get a script right. So those are things that are the given. But I think the main thing over here is if you want to avoid major problems, is find the right crew and find the right people to work with from your producer to your essential crew. That'll leave you mentally free to not worry about egos and not worry about am I being heard properly. I think again, Venu, one of the things that I remember when I was making Udaan, I really wanted Venu to shoot the film, and he tried to work out dates, he couldn't. I spoke to Rajiv. Rajiv also wanted to try and work out dates, but he couldn't. Eventually, I was like, okay, what do I do? And Venu was like, okay, he was putting me in touch with a third cinematographer. He's like, why don't you talk to this person? And I did. And Venu himself called me back 2 days later. He's like, you know what? Who are you comfortable with as a cinematographer? Like, what's your comfort level? I said, I'm Inder Shetty and me have been friends for a while. I'm super comfortable with him. He's like, then just work with a guy you're comfortable with, because you don't want to be in a situation where you are trying to communicate with the cinematographer in your first film. You don't know if you're getting through to him or not, getting through to him or her or not. So, yes, maybe the guy you're working with right now will give you 20% less in terms of a creative vision, but at least your process will be seamless, and you won't have to sort of like deal with that. I think that's some of the best advice that he gave me. So the best advice I can give people: work with people you really want to.
Vikram, also like just as an ancillary question to the question that has been asked, what happens when you start to envision your story with certain actors? I know that and you've spoken about it in interviews as well, that Udaan was initially a different cast, and then it had to be changed, and it's worked out beautifully. But at the point that it was changing and you were not getting the people that you wanted to work with, what was it like? How did you rewire yourself?
You just in Udaan's case, I think what happened was that like literally the film got a life of its own, right? So it literally went beyond the cast. Like we were in the middle of camera tests, and literally I had done my first camera test with Rajat. It was like we had just done it. And we were in the lab and we were looking at the rushes, and it was looking great. And we tested all this stock and it was looking so beautiful. And then I got a call saying, oh, the actor wants to postpone the film by a month and a half and blah blah. And I was just it was like sort of crushed. So I called Anurag. I'm like, what do we do? And I said, no, we're shooting. Whatever comes, we're shooting. And you realize that it's just like the film is so much more important than the other sort of like stuff. So you have to rewire yourself immediately and just move on. And we did all the calls we had to, and we got the people we wanted to. So you cannot let, and I think you learn over a period of time, right? I mean, you've had this kind of stuff, and one of the big struggles that every filmmaker is going to face afterwards is that how do you keep that balance between keeping your innocence and not becoming too cynical and not letting go too much. I think there has to be a fine balance between them. Yes, today I'm not the same innocent filmmaker I was 10 years ago when I started, so therefore I know that, okay, I can cheat this and I can cheat that, and I shouldn't be oversensitive about this, oversensitive about that. But you also can't become so cold that you don't that you don't have feelings left for a certain kind of way of doing things, a certain kind of emotion for that. I think finding that for me has been one of the balancing acts of sort of like saying, okay, I care, and versus I care and versus I don't care, and I'll find a solution. But finding that little bit in between, which is a great balancing act between caring just about enough where it's not eating you up. I think that's the right place, and it's a lovely place to be, and that's what we're all trying to look for at some point.
Vikram, Hani Trehan wants to know, how did you come up with the name Andolan?
So this is not nepotism. I just want to sort of like make that clear. So I come from a family that if anybody's seen any of these old sort of like pictures, there's a thing called Chicago radio, right? So they used to make like loudspeakers and stuff, and Gandhiji and Nehru and all on Chicago radio. So the family was doing very well, and my grandfather decided he wanted to go and produce a film, right? And he produced a film. This is 1949. He produced a film with Kishore Kumar called Andolan, which was about the freedom struggle, and it's come 2 years out. The film tanked very badly. And of course, the larger collective family said that we will never speak about this again. So that film was buried somewhere, and they never spoke about it again. No other film was ever made. And then as much later in my life, like like when it's a joint family and things were sort of like my father or one of my aunts suddenly gives me this photo set, and it says Andolan, and Motwane Manufacturing has made this film, and I was like, wow, this is cool, and I'd heard, so I've now started to go to talk to uncles and aunts and say, hey, kya tha ye? What was this movie? And they all started to tell me about this thing, and I finally got a DVD of it and all that sort of stuff, and Andolan was actually Atul Sabarwa's idea, because he and me are writing a show called Stardust together, which is actually about the film industry in 47 onwards. And he just said, one day I was like, I'm forming a new company. I was like, what do I call it? And, different ideas of it. He said, you should just call it Andolan. And it worked so correctly, because there's a history to the name. There's also a revolution that everybody feels that they want to sort of like create. Because the revolution in your head is different from the revolution that they actually want to do. It just really sat very well. I think there was a lovely emotional touch to the name, and especially for me. So yeah, that's how it started.
Shayoni Gupta wants to know, do you think it takes a different temperament to be an AD before you become a director?
Yes, it does. It depends. Look, so today, a lot of people who are becoming ADs today are becoming... So, okay, in the old structure, and I'm saying old versus new is, and it's not specifically like Germany, for example, still uses the old structure. The old structure would be, you'd have a chief assistant director and you'd have ADs, and they would be doing everything from scheduling to being DAs to doing short breakdowns to working on post-production to sitting on music sittings. Everything would be done by a team of maybe 3 to 4 assistant directors, right? There would be one chief, and then everybody below that was like, there was no real hierarchy over it. And then in today's day and age, you have your first AD, second, third AD cast, third AD extras. And then there's a DA who's entirely separate, right? The first AD, second assistant, the ADs today are producers people. They're called assistant directors, but they're actually producers people. Their job is to make sure that the film is made on time and within schedule and all that sort of stuff. Most first ADs and most assistant directors today would actually go on to become producers. They make really good producers, and that's what you've seen around the world. Mostly is the fact that those first assistant directors are going to become, they'll become associate producers and then become producers afterwards. The DAs are the ones who will go on to become directors. This is international. In India, it's still a bit fluid. It's like most ADs have gone on to become directors. And whether it's from the older system or the newer system. But I still believe that if you want to be a director, the older system was better in a certain sort of way because you are far more involved in the creative process than you are as a first assistant director today. Today's first ADs are hired for prep, they're hired for the shoot, and they move on to another job. They're not there as part of post. They're not there as part of like creative pre-production. And those are very important places to be. And post-production for me has actually been the greatest learning place for me for anything that I've learned. Is working on post-production through Andolan and Devdas have been my greatest learning. And I think that you learn so much in post-production, but I don't think assistant directors today get a chance to be as a part of that. You'll be a first AD and then on post, there'll be a post supervisor. So, or then you'll have a DA who sort of like does that. So yeah, it is, if you know you want to be a director, it's great. So then be an assistant director because on set, you are doing a job, but you're also learning. But if you don't know what it is that you want to be afterwards, and you're going to be an assistant director, there's a chance that you'll actually find that you actually want to be a producer, or you want to be a showrunner, and not specifically a director. Because the director also has a separate skill set. It's not really... Yes, management of time is a very major part of filmmaking. Management of the day is a very major part of filmmaking. Knowing your budget, knowing how to work in a crisis. You've planned 20 shots for the entire day, it's rained for 3 hours, what are you going to do? Right? You can't sort of like lie on the ground and hold your head and say, I don't know, I really want these 20 shots. You have to work around that. That is a part of filmmaking. That is a part of being a director. So yes, you have to also know that, but you also have to understand how all that's going to fit together, how your post is going to come together, how your edit's going to come together. Those are very, very important.
Hi, Vikram sir.
Hello.
Yeah, so my question is, it's very easy to lose the grip and fall into the trap of rushing towards making your first film. So how did you get towards understanding of knowing if it was a thirst to make a film, or if you were genuinely rushing towards making a film?
I think so. In my case, I had enough time and I think part of this is what, I tried to answer. I think when Smriti said that when you have all those scripts lying in your cupboard, what is it that you really know that you want to end up making? I think one of the things that is like, it's like you have that material and that script calls out to you. So somebody comes and says, yeah, do you want to make that film? You jump at it, right? You're completely ready for it. You know you want to make this film. You know that this is the only thing that, or definitely one of those 2 or 3 things that you will 100% make on any given day. That is a sort of like love relationship that you've got with that film. And that's very hard to explain beyond, that. Yes, I mean, and honestly, you don't know whether you're rushing into anything, right? And because you have to, yes, I mean, one part of it is, okay, the actual physical prep that is required, where on an average, you'd say, 3 months to prep something, because that's what you always need. You get a crew together, you prep it, all that sort of stuff. Mentally, I don't think any director ever knows that they're actually ready to go out there and make their first film. You just believe that you're ready to do it. As long as your script is in a space where you're happy with it, as long as you've had enough time to physically prep for it, then you just have to go out there and do it. There is no such thing as knowing that you're mentally ready to make it, because you'll never be it. Like I wasn't sure whether I was mentally ready to make that. I wasn't sure whether I was mentally ready to make Lootera after. And I definitely I wasn't in the mental space to make it. But you do it. You look back and if I look back right now, like, okay, I have to fix the right things in there. Go out there and get your head sorted, but also go out there and fix your script. Those are things you need to do. Whether you're ready or not is something that you will never have a definite answer to.
First of all, thank you so much, Smriti ma'am, for curating such an immense knowledge series for us. To Vikram sir, the first half of my question got answered by you on the AD part, but the second was, is there a particular industry standard CV for a director? Like how to showcase our talent as a director?
Today, like you asked me this question, honestly, if you're asking this question from when I was an assistant director, it's a very different thing from today. I think today you as a director, your work is going to get you can't CV your work as a director. You know what I mean? Your director's work is the work that you are doing, whether it's music videos or whether it's short films or whether it's whatever. That is your work. It's a tough game to play. It's a tough situation to be in today because there is so much content out there. Like one of the things that we would be screaming for 20 years ago is, how do I showcase my film? So I'm going to make a short film, then you make a DVD, and then you hope people see it. You cross your fingers, you send it to people, and you hope people see it, or you send it to festivals and hope they see it over there. I think today, between YouTube and Vimeo and Instagram, I think that between these three, you've actually got more than enough avenues to be able to go out there and kind of showcase your work. It is tougher to break through, definitely. And that's exactly, but the good part is that the better your work is, if your work is good, you will find the attention. I think, and what social media does today is the amount of, the amount of people, and I'm actually new on Instagram, but yet the amount of people who are constantly sending me these like super interesting mashups of my work with some other music, and there's so many talented guys out there. And they have access, right? Right now, like all you guys have access to the people who you really want to reach out to. And most of the time, we end up seeing that work because it's cool to see. And it's like, it's so much fun to actually sort of like see that kind of stuff. But I've seen so many interesting, talented people, who've sort of like got their work and sort of putting it out there on the platform, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Vimeo, whether it's... So I think it can be a bit daunting, but the short answer is that make work that is clutter breaking. Make work that's going to get noticed. Make work that people will... And again, the same rule of the fact that if you work hard enough, people will hear about it. The same thing is over here. You make something clutter breaking, people will see it. In today's social media day and age, they will pass it on, and they will pass it on, and people will pass it on, and someone will see it. So yeah, just take care.
So basically, I do not come from a filmmaking background. I'm an architect. But when it comes to this, when you talk of creativity, and you stress greatly on the importance of self-belief and trust and faith in your work and your process. So what happens on the days that sort of takes a hit, Forget days, like I have weeks or months when I don't trust anything that I'm putting out or drawing out. So how do you have that steady faith in your choices, your decisions? Have there been scripts that you once sort of read and dismissed? Later, on a better day, you came back to it and you said, oh, wait, that did have something that I could sort of show off of.
No, it's true, Nishi. It happens. It's happened to me. It's happened to a lot of us. And I've been through situations like, so what happens is that I always find it very difficult to write multiple drafts of my work. I can't do it. So even on Udaan, which is a script where because the creative process takes so much out of you, you can't go back to it all the time and keep sort of like churning at it, right? You have to like even on Udaan, I could never go back and do these multiple drafts. I would always go back a year later, to that stuff and then rewrite it, because you feel like you're entering a world and you're churning inside over there to be able to sort of like create something, right? You will go through days where you will feel that I do not want to even sort of like see that work. This is utter crap. This is utter thing. And there's multiple ways, and I think you'll have to find whatever's comfortable for you in terms of how to deal with that. You can either walk away from that, right? And like I was saying, if the work calls out to you again, if that script is sitting in that cupboard and is saying that please make me, then it's worth making. That's a bond that you have then created with that work, which is unshakable. And you will go out there and you will sort of like make it. I find it sometimes very, very like, when the words, like when you're writing sometimes, right, the words after a point in time, once you've written so much of it, they just become words to you. Those words suddenly have no meaning. One very useful thing for you to do is then narrate your story to people. Sit somebody down, narrate it to people. Let the words come out of your mouth. Try and sort of like say it in a different sort of way. Try and be able to encapsulate it. Try and sort of like say it in the beginning, middle, and ending. Try and say it in different ways. Try and say it in ways that you've never sort of seen it before. Try and be objective. I find that narrations, like part of an actor's, you always hear actors saying, yeah, narration de do, and part of you is like, yeah, just read the damn script. Na, yaar. Itna kaam kiya on the script. Why can't you just read it? Why do you have to narrate it to you? But narrations, when you want objectivity for your work, they are extremely useful. And narration doesn't mean formally. If you want, by all means, and you can do this. I've done all these things. I've either I've gone to a friend and I've said on a phone, and I'm saying I'm stuck on this script. Here's something I'm really stuck on, and you just blurt it out. And as you talk, right, or call 5 of your friends formally. Okay, 5 loko, I've got them. I've sat them down in front of me, and I said, I'm going to narrate my script to you beginning to ending. You're giving me 2 hours of your time, and I'm going to do this with you. Or work on something else. Walk away from that stuff for a while. Work on something else. Let your mind sort of like do that, or wander. Watch a bunch of stuff. Read a bunch of stuff. I always find that in the middle of writing, even though it sounds like a lot of people say that, oh, you don't get influenced, but I actually find watching other things while I'm writing actually helps me a lot. It helps me be able to look at my work in a far more objective sort of way and find solutions to it. And then there is just the obsession that you sometimes end up having with a bit of material. I've been in places where I've been stuck on a script, right? And I've done literally all these things that I'm telling you right now. Okay, I have a deadline. I have to deliver the script in a week. I've only written 20 pages, and I'm stuck, and I don't know what to do with this entire sort of stuff. And you obsess about it. And I think the worst feeling that I used to have in my life is that hitting that wall. That wall used to be like you feel this is impenetrable because no solution is sort of like working. You can do 2 things. You can either walk away and then say that, okay, I'm going to walk away from this, and it was an idea that I should never have had, and it's useless, and so on and so forth. I've done that also, and I have regretted it because there's times when I've walked away from a script after 70 pages. And I've never found the energy to come back and finish it. And then I always look back and I've given people to read. They're like, this is so good. Why didn't you finish it? And I was like, because I came to a point where I just had enough and I walked away, which I shouldn't have done. So my advice in that kind of thing is always find your solution. You have to break through that wall. Go for walks, do whatever it is. Find that solution to something else. If you don't find a solution, then maybe it's not there. Maybe that's something that's not worth doing it for. But never give up on something until you've actually sort of like found a solution for it and gone and finished those 100 pages. I feel that the biggest crime sometimes we commit on scripts is the fact that we abandon them at 30 pages, 40 pages without completing it to the 100 pages, without giving it that 100% to complete it all the way through. I think we need to do that. And for all you know, at the end of 100 pages, like, this is shit, I want to burn this. And it's okay, then burn it. But at least you finish it enough, and it's your right to burn it as a completed thing and not as something that's incomplete.
Hello. Hi, sir. So my question, like a lot of my questions have been answered. So like most of it. So my question is, as creators, we live and breathe life into our characters and our content, and we get attached to it. I feel like when you're a young creator, the process of elimination becomes more difficult while writing and even on set. So I'd like to know what can one do to make that easier, and how they say learn to kill your darlings. So how do I kill my darlings and not feel too bad about it? Like, that's my question.
You will feel bad about it. So the only way to do it is to do it. You have to look. Here's the thing, right? Nothing is permanent. Nothing is permanent until your film is released or until you're sort of like getting into shoot. So on a script, don't overthink the fact that, oh, is killing my darlings going to sort of like ruin it? Just kill them for the moment. Live with it for that much time. It's the same thing on life here. Time heals all, blah blah blah. Like the same thing. The same thing applies to your script as well, or the same thing applies to your work as well. Is that you have something and you love this scene and you don't want to sort of like get rid of it, but one part of you saying that if I do this, these are the things that are actually going to happen. It's going to clear up this path for me. But I'm going to feel so bad. We've all been there, right? The only solution you have is, for the moment, kill them. A week later, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, you will know. Either there's only two things that will happen. Either you will miss them really badly and you want them back, in which case, but by then you've also found the solution as to what you're going to do with them. Or you won't miss them. You realize that this you're actually for the better. That's when you know, and that's when you again go back to the situation of sort of like saying, okay, fine, now I can live without them, and I'm okay with it. Or you can sort of like say, okay, fine, I really want them. How do I bring them back? And sometimes I've done this also. You kill your darlings and then you regret it afterwards.
Give us an example, Vikram. You walked into this one. You have to tell us. So come on, tell us one thing.
It's the so on Lootera, right? The script in Lootera had this. You know, he talks in Lootera about the fact that Chandratal jana tha, Chandratal dekhna tha, my living in dream. So the script actually had the fact that at the end of the script, Paki goes to Chandratal and she's at that lake, and so we actually did go to the lake and we actually shot over there. And I put that sequence in the beginning of the film, and I put it at the end of the film. And I actually found at the end of the film it doesn't work anymore. I felt that moment where for what is the end of the film for me worked really well as the end of the film. I felt anything more that I'm saying after that is sort of overstating what I wanted to say. Right? But till the very last minute, the beginning of the film had the same conversation that Paki and Varun have, was actually over the opening titles of the film, where you see this lake. And in that moment, I felt that it's making, and again, this is the insecurity, right? That point, I'm like, okay, this film is too slow. And I felt that the beginning, that opening was making this film too slow. And I just wanted to sort of like, you know, felt that if I take it out, it'll make the film faster, you know. And a couple of people told me then the fact that it's not about making a film faster. It's about setting the right tone for your film. About setting the right thing that you actually wanted to say for your film. And that's what at that point in time, I was like, no, this is not the thing. So today I regret not putting that in. Of course, only I know the answer. Only I know this. The world doesn't know this. For them, the fact is like, yes, they saw the film and the film is what it is. But for me, there's that entire thing of like, you know, so sometimes it's just like, how do you, and this answers a lot of questions. You're never going to know the answers to what you're doing is right, what you're doing is wrong. You're just going to do it with your instinct at that point in time. Hopefully, your script is in a place that you're super happy with it, and everybody in your team's happy with it, and you're confident about it. So you sort of like do it without having to worry about the baggage of, am I doing what is right on a script level? You should ideally, when you're walking into shooting your film, you should not have to worry about your script. That's where you should be. If you are worrying about your script and worrying about whether each scene is going to count, that's a very bad place to be. That's not a good place to be. That's so yeah. I mean, so that's my regret. So it'll be, but I'm over it now. Of course, like if I have to go back, that's the one thing I would sort of like do about that. But that's learning, nah. How else do you sort of like learn and how else do you grow? Yeah, these are only things that your life will teach you, that you will learn from them, and you'll know what to do, what not to do next time. You'll just be more careful, or you'll just be, you know, more aware of these things, or more aware of, do I let emotion be the most important thing versus, you know, making my film shorter? Like, what's more important for you? You'll understand these things as you work.
But it's good to know all of this from you, Vikram, because sometimes, you know, one chance is all you get, you know, and you want to be prepared. You want to be super prepared for that. Can we unmute Akash Huda, please?
So I asked how important is hierarchy in a collaborative writing process. So when multiple people are writing together, even if it is like two people, so how important is hierarchy supposed to be in that case? And is decision making a more important thing, or is freedom more important?
Did you get that, or is the audio really bad?
The audio is bad, but I have seen in the chat that Akash is actually sort of put in. So how important is hierarchy in the collaborative writing? I saw his question in the chat.
Yes.
No, Akash, like pretty much that. He's frozen.
Go for it, Vic. Yeah.
So if I understood the question right, I think the hierarchy in writing, it is somebody's vision that is going to lead the process, right? Some of the most difficult things that I've always ended up finding in writing is how to be able to stay objective. When you're doing it by yourself, you get so subjective that you can't really sort of like, you can't see the wood from the trees, and then therefore you're stuck and now you have to wait on a whole bunch of feedback to sort of like do it. I've found that it's actually sometimes a lot easier and a lot more productive to be able to say that this is my vision and I'm going to have somebody else sort of like write for that vision, so then I can sort of like stay objective about the process and be able to guide it in the right sort of way. And I found that the older I'm getting, that I actually find that to be a better process. Like in the beginning, it would always be this thing of like, I want to write what I'm going to direct. Because it's my words and it's my vision. Because after a point in time, your vision's not compromised if somebody else is writing a vision. It's still your vision, right? But it's collaborative, and it gives you the objectivity that you actually sort of like need to be able to look at your material and better it. I've now found that it's actually better if there is a collaboration, and within that collaboration there is a hierarchy saying that I am the final word on this. But that shouldn't stop other people from being able to sort of like collaborate this process and then me take the final word on this this whole thing. So yeah, I mean, it's one needs to keep that hierarchy, because yeah, in the end of the day, it's always one person's vision, especially if that person is also the director. And to be able to, so you understand how it works on the way down. So now in the case of a series, there will be a showrunner who's the final word on it, and there might or might not be a head creative writer or a lead writer. So it depends on those kind of stuff, on things. But yes, it needs to be one person's thing. Otherwise, it might just end up becoming a bit.
Hi, Vikram sir. So my question to you is, with writers, from inside out, they are very opinionated. Every writer director has a lot of things to say, but from the outside, from the inside out, actually, they are at the end of the day quite insecure people as well. So sort of my question around it is that what steps can a first-time writer-director take to make collaborators invest in your project? Not financially, but like apart from that, just sort of put their faith in you and make sure that, you know, what you're going to do with that project, they're going to be okay with that. So what kind of steps can a first-time writer-director take in order to sort of ensure their collaborators that their vision is going to be something worthwhile investing in?
Yeah, you know what? There's a short answer that your vision is going to be on the page, right? There in the material, you shouldn't have to. Ideal world, you shouldn't have to convince anyone of your vision or your collaborators of your vision beyond your story. That's pretty much the only thing that they need to know to be able to sort of do that. And of course, there's a part of it where it's like, yes, there is the fact that, okay, if you're directing it, like, can you direct? You know, like what's your skill set like? And that's from your past work. You'll be able to show them your past work and to be able to show the fact that here's what I've done before. This is a short film, or this is a video. This is that. There is your personality also, which is something that people will always. That's one of those things which you can't really. There's no pointers to it. There's no sort of like hard and fast rules to the entire fact of. There's great filmmakers who are super friendly. There's great filmmakers who are complete dicks. So I'm saying that there's that range goes. But if your material is good and if people have faith in your material first, I think that's what is going to, get them to sort of like collaborate with you. But coming back to the first thing you said, yes, writers have a tendency to be very, very insecure, and they also have a tendency to, at the same time, sort of like be very opinionated about their work. You will need to find that balance. And again, I've been there. I've been the guy who's been the one who thinks that he knows best about his work and he's opinion about that work. What tends to happen is that people start to presume that you are either stuck up or egotistical or arrogant or any of those kind of things because of the way that you end up supporting your work. Sometimes, and I've had the situation, and it's weird. Like some people afterwards who became friends of mine, their first opinion about me was the fact that, yeah, kitna arrogant aadmi. Because I was opinionated, because I had something to say about something. So over time, two things will happen. Either they'll understand you better and realize that that's not actually sort of like you, or you will learn to shut up the first time and not say exactly what it is that's on your mind. You learn to navigate situations. There's nothing there's nothing wrong with knowing how to navigate a situation, quite honestly, right? You're not compromising. You are not taking a back seat. You're not doing that kind of stuff. You're listening and you're being able to navigate it without actually, so it's just being smart. Right? It's just being smart about the situation of saying, do I open my mouth here or do I not? And again, comes back to the fact of time, like when it's feedback, like just generally just don't try and defend yourself when someone's giving you feedback on something that you're doing, whether it's your film or your writing or your work, unless they ask for it, right? Don't defend it. Listen. Just there's a 1% chance that one thing they say might actually be useful to you, right? Don't not allow them the chance to say that 1%. Sometimes when you tend to, sort of like be defensive, that they switch off from telling you that one thing that could have been useful to you. So, today you ask me, yes, it depends. I will always gauge the room or gauge the person before I give my opinion at that point in time. Whether do I want to come across as the arrogant prick who's going to be like strong-minded over here, or do I want to just shut up and listen to what they have to say? Depends on who you want to be in that moment. Smriti is laughing. I think that answers the question.
Sir, really amazing session so far. It's one of the most like you've expressed your vulnerabilities in the best way I've seen so far. So thank you very much for that. The question which I had was when you spoke about like as you mentioned that your innocence is very important as a creative person. And it's our job to safeguard it. But then during the process of filmmaking, as you make films, the tricks. How do you safeguard the creativity and maintain the enthusiasm of making cinema, making great cinema or telling great stories? How do you maintain that enthusiasm and the feels which you get when you look at a story or cinema per se? So how do you do that, please?
Being that enthusiastic, look, you're gonna feel that. I think this is also something that was asked before. What's gonna happen is, like those feels are only gonna come when you're actually either you think of an idea or you're writing on that idea for the very first time, or you're sort of like doing that, right? The intention that you actually write something with. Once it's written and once it's on the page, it's going to be very difficult for you to feel that sort of that, because that enthusiasm is now coming from your head and it's now on the page. Now it's a matter of actioning that, right? So you've written a script. Now that script means now you're going to go out there and you're going to get the money for it. You're going to get the cast for it. The cast is going to come on board based on your enthusiasm on the script. Based on the script material and your enthusiasm, right? They're going to sense it in you when you're going to go out there and tell them. The actors and people are going to understand how you feel. And it doesn't need to be, you don't have to be outward, you don't have to be gregarious, you don't have to be loud about it, but they will sense your affinity to your material from the way you talk about it. They will sense your clarity from the way you talk about it. That's very, very important, right? So you don't have to be outgoing, you can be shy. But when you talk about, I'm a very shy person, except when it comes to talking about my work. I love it. I mean, that's something that I can happily talk about. People will understand that. Then you get a cast on board, you get a producer on board. Then after that you get a crew on board. The crew will also come because they will either find an affinity with the material or an affinity with you, right? Now you're going to go start looking for locations and all that sort of stuff. There's no enthusiasm in that process here. It's a donkey process. You have to basically go out there and find locations and find this and find that and all that sort of stuff. And then the actual shooting, plan kiya, ye shot, wo shot. It's very difficult to have that enthusiasm stay through, or that sort of like innocence for cinema to stay through the process. At some point in time, you are going to start to focus on the actual processing, the actual work part, right? You in your head have to also remember, just in your mind, is constantly keep remembering what is it that drove you here in the first place? What is it that you wanted to sort of like say? What is it that you still want to say in the first place? And keep that at the top of your mind. What happens sometimes is, I've seen this with many, many filmmakers. They write something, and then when they come on set, they are already tired of what they've written. They feel they want a certain amount of freshness in their material. It's feeling stale. It's actually not stale. You have to constantly go back to that moment of how you felt when you wrote this, when you finalized this. How did you feel at that point in time? If you're feeling that that's wrong and this is right, then by all means change it, right? But always take yourself back to that moment of when you actually wrote this and treat the script as a little bit of like a Bible, because And again, for some personal experience, just like I can say that every time I've gone and ignored what's in the script and done something else on set, I've regretted it afterwards. I've always felt that whatever it is, just shoot what's there. Do extra stuff if you want. Do whatever it is. But just shoot what's there. So, that innocence and stuff and that love for it is going to come across through your material. It's going to come across through your energies. But beyond that, it can't. Don't try and. I don't think you can look for it in everything. It's not going to come when you go on a location recce or a tech recce or that kind of stuff. You're going to have to analyze what you need and then sort of like find those kinds of things. Your energies on set of like how you want to be able to actors to sort of like behave and sort of like do that kind of stuff. That's going to all come across. But that's not so much innocence. That's more about what you want out of your material. It's only when you finish the film, when you see your first cut, were those intentions there? Is that when you know the answer?
Thank you so much, Vikram. Thank you everyone for joining in. Guys, our next session is with writer Juhi Chaturvedi. Juhi will be talking about, wholesome writing and purposeful writing and living. And we've also got a host of other sessions planned, our roster for July and August. Here are the creators who are going to be taking sessions. So please plug in and give us your feedback. Tell us how we can do things better. We are learning as we go along. And Vikram, thank you so much for this extremely insightful session. So thank you so much.